So what are we, episode 4?
Yes, all the way.
Wow. We don't have many views now, but we're hoping they'll come.
Yes,
What did they say? Subscribe and like. Is that what
that's right.
everyone says? That's
Yeah,
right.
hit the bell. That's right.
Ah, yeah, we're not into all of that. But anyway, if you find this useful, let us know.
That's
So
right.
prototyping,
Yes.
why do we do it? As a
Hmm.
developer, what's the point of prototyping? What's the
Hmm.
point of stopping what you're doing and looking at various aspects of development, kind of? Why do we do all of that?
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think that's
I'll start off just by saying just my observation, because I'm also somebody who likes to just run in and start coding, right? I like to be in the creative process, and for me, it usually starts while I'm coding, and I get that initial feedback in the browser often, or whatever I'm building. But I realize that's only sufficient for me. That doesn't actually translate to the rest of the stakeholders who are often involved. Especially if it's for a customer or product, owner, they need to see something that we can all discuss before I get into the creative side, or I'm going to waste a lot of time. So that was just my observation. The first time I saw prototyping save a whole lot of time was, the customer looking at the prototype, and immediately seeing, oh, wait, that's not going to work, where we wouldn't have seen that probably weeks down the road. So that's
yeah,
just a thought. Yeah.
that's
To
and
kick
that's
us
I
off.
mean, yeah, that's really an important aspect. But there's also, I think, a lot of prototyping happens on the technical level. It's like,
Mm,
can we connect to X, or
right.
will that database give us the performance we need? Or, you know,
Yeah.
I've been down the road so many products, and then you then try and, oh, performance, we'll deal with that later. Yeah, then you chose the wrong database, or you just haven't anticipated the volumes that are going to come. And I think,
Mm,
or you realize that that component library that you chose and is now embedded doesn't have a critical thing that you need, or can't do what you want. And I think,
hmm
to me, 20 years ago when I started, it's like you had one tool. You just,
Right.
like, we had SQL and we had Delphi, and that was it.
Yeah.
And that was it. You just, there weren't other options out there,
hmm
basically. You kind of just made everything go through that one option.
Yep.
You know, you either did VB, or you did C++, or you did Delphi, and that was it.
Yeah. And I
And
guess
it's
it
like,
was, yeah, like at a certain point, you could only buy two or three different types of shoes, right? It was a
yeah,
boot, it was a casual shoe, or, I think that's exactly what you're saying. At a certain point, that's how software was. You only had these models to work with. But now I
and
guess
you,
it's more crucial. Sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
it's common. Yeah, I'm just saying, if you wanted controls, you built them. If you
Yes, exactly.
wanted, I mean,
Yeah.
we needed client server. I built it from the
Yeah.
ground up.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of things we built because they just weren't out there.
hmm
And then, with .NET and all of these, when that came in, suddenly there were more libraries, more options. But I still think, even I started a project in about 2007, and there was a fair amount of, it came with an idea, and it was like, is this technically possible? And I think that's always a good place to
Yeah.
start. Is this technically possible?
hmm And often this, just as you're saying this, it reminds me that often the really value adds and innovative solutions come in that space where you're asking if it's possible and maybe solving it in a way that somebody else didn't, consider.
Yeah.
Um, uh, just a short aside on that, I heard last year they sold Twitch, the guys who originally built Twitch, which is like a gaming streaming platform, for almost $1 billion to Amazon. But when they started it in the early 90s, they started it trying to solve the problem of one guy had funding to broadcast his life through a webcam 24/7. And they got hired to try to figure that out, which wasn't really a thing in the early 90s. They had packets, I mean, late 90s, they had to basically figure out the best way to what we call stream. So, but now that's $900 million of value because they figured out how to stream when somebody else, hadn't considered the problem yet. So they could almost see their whole business was a prototype for the real value that they added.
I mean, I'll give you an example. When I built we had to transfer like thousands of files, and a client phoned us and said it was taking 24 hours, and we're like, how is that possible? Until we realized that we were streaming across from England to France, one file at a time, something like 50,000 files. Each one takes like a millisecond. That's 24 hours. I can't remember the exact maths, but it worked. Right. And we're like, oh, that's dumb.
Yes,
it took us a lot to actually go back and work out how to compress stuff, basically zip it up, transfer the zip file, and then unzip it on the other side. And, it was just things had never been done.
You're right. Probably a full half of all of that processing in the first approach was just a handshake and disconnect.
Yeah.
So just that probably took out half the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So this is great. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just saying, and even down to, but I think the big thing with prototype is always, what are we trying to achieve? I mean, I think there are multiple levels of prototypes. There's we want to produce a product, and we're wanting to use like 3 or 4 different technologies. So how do they work? How do they work together? Are they going to talk to each other? What would it take to talk to each other? Before you get too far, and then it's like, and build something that actually works. I mean, I think that's important, but there's also prototyping on the level of, I just want, I am got a bug in my app, or I hit a situation and I'm like, I don't know which way to turn. Let me just pull the whole concept out of this big app and just say, let me prototype just that one single problem.
Yes.
And I've found that to be incredibly useful. I mean, I think about, I grew up with Mythbusters. You can still find tons of them on YouTube.
Yes.
But they always took the problem apart, and then they would test each variation, which gives us, the biggest boom, or which creates, the fastest or the highest, and they would test a range of items. And I think that level of problem solving is critical in development, is to say, if I did it this way, is it performance better? Or if I did it that way, is the performance better? I don't know. So
you're right, weighing this complexity of concerns, and I think even though it seems like software is getting simpler, they talk about 5th generation software, it's actually the software is getting more complicated, but they're simplifying the user experience. And that's what you're saying. It often takes even more engineering to figure out how are we going to put these disparate, complicated systems in a way that the user doesn't even think about it. And that's, you're absolutely right. That's,
I mean, if you think about it, the user interface of ChatGPT is probably the simplest user interface there is. Here's a box, go for it.
And Google proved how valuable that was, 30 years ago, but that, ChatGPT just stuck another tool on the other end, right?
But it's like, how complicated is that back end?
Right.
And that is, it's not about, and sometimes the reason interfaces are complicated is because the back end is simple. and you transfer in all of the complication to your user.
Yeah, and he's letting them tweak every little thing. Yep.
But I always maintain, they go, simplify the UX. I'm like, okay, you got 2 options. You either dumb down the app, or you've got a whole lot of smarts going on in the back. And that's a whole lot of work that most people aren't willing to pay for.
Yeah, and striking that balance. And you can even see with the big companies how there's the deviation. Adobe doesn't try to necessarily simplify. Their tools are very dense and rich, and you have to train to be a Photoshop expert. But then you have Google, who recently just simplified, not dumbed down, but stripped what they used to have, a powerful Google Drive app that could do Sheets and Excel and presentations. And now they split those each into simple for-purpose apps. I think, again, to try to maybe different philosophy. And this again goes back to prototyping. I'm sure that there's probably prototypes of the Google App Suite that's completely different user experience, but they test it out, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So is there prototyping things that you are going currently on in the My Body journey?
Yeah, I'm going to share. So one of the big things, of course, let me just get this up, is we want to hook into some AI. I mean, that's part of our plan from the very beginning, is to say, well, how can this AI benefit us?
Yeah.
And in what way can we use the AI? And that then raises a question is, do we back off a open model, a online model such as OpenAI or one of those, the Cloudflare models, et cetera,
right?
Or are we going to run a model in our own infrastructure? I mean, some of that'll come down to performance, and we might be forced at some point, but at least what are the benefits of running it locally? How, instead of saying, well, our users got, 10,000 records, over 6 months, they've been diligently recording, 4 times a day. And that's going to be a lot of tokens to kick into a, OpenAI or something like that.
Yep.
So I'm going to show you what I did. I looked at Chroma DB. I'm not saying this is the one we'll go for, but this is, so I started investigating and looking at vector databases and said, do we need a vector database and a traditional SQL database? Can we just get away with a vector database? I don't think so, but these are questions that we now need to ask, is like, ChatGPT is fine. It's out there. It's great. But it's like, how do we make use of it in our app? And also, I mean, we did that other app, which was running off a graph database, and we used ChatGPT to build, queries. We gave it the schema and it built queries. Then we got the data. This is an even more integrated. We're giving the AI our data and saying, go for it. Also, with ours, passing on personal data that's got medical information to ChatGPT would just not be, that's just, we'd run foul of a whole bunch of legal things. So I think legally we're going to be required to be running stuff ourselves. I don't know what the performance issues of that are, but
there's lots of scalable ways of doing that these days. Definitely.
But let me take you through. Everything's in Python, which was a bit of a learning curve for me in the first place. But my Python's getting there. So, right. So we go, okay, first of all, I got this off ChatGPT, the Chroma latest, Chroma DB, and it's all running in Postgres. Okay. So I'm running that locally, I'm running that locally here on my Docker locally, so that's all running locally. And it's persistent. So then what you do, okay, I just get in some folders, down. Create.
Loading the model,
Wait, I just want to, wait, that's, I'm just, initial, that's what I was looking for. Then we set up the model. There's with sentence transformers. We pointed to our local running on 8,000. We create a collection, and then we're good. Then we return our collection. So that initializes our connection to the Chroma database. Then I had this file, which is a bunch of just random, well, a little bit more than random, but different items I wanted to test against. We've got some activity, some body pains, we've got some pollution, some chicken and rice and vitamins and just a note and some fish and some potato chips, beer and a whiskey.
Nice.
So this then picks that file up. You can't embed a JSON file like JavaScript.
Right.
Okay, so we picked that up. I tried embeddings, and ultimately embeddings did not give me what I wanted.
Okay.
So I just ditched them. You can see they all commented out because it really didn't give me what I wanted. And then it was interesting. Let me just see if I can get that up. If I go, I have a cat that's wanting to come in. See, I'm looking. Yeah, this is what I want to show. So in the beginning, the generated code that I got from ChatGPT put everything as category, name, date, value for all of my things. And that just, I ran that, it just did not work.
Okay.
It just
the structure of it, you think, obscured the meaning of it.
Yeah, I just think that in the vectorization, it couldn't create context.
Right, exactly. It was too formal, and so it couldn't associate freely between the values. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I eventually came up with this, had a level, and then the value, the name, the category, and the date at this time. Because date just doesn't give context. Whereas if you're saying, I had this experience at this time, it then has an association of time and place and, all of these things. So, and then basically created that for each one of them. I had so many units of vitamin C, let's say, at this time, or I did this amount of exercise, and it just a note. And then,
so would you kind of say this is almost like humanized encoding it or natural language encoding it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, makes sense.
And then, so I'm just going to run this. This will drop all the collections out of a Chroma database.
And you interact with the Chroma database over HTTP?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
that client. Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. You can run the Chroma kind of in line. But then
it's more flexible this way. Yeah.
And it's more difficult to persist data and all of that. Okay.
Sure.
So let me just run this one to initialize it back up. And then obviously at some point we're going to have to now try this all from Node.
Yes.
That's the next level. And also try, ramping up. Okay. So I am going to put a breakpoint down there to show you what the documents look like. And I think that's, a simple app, even if it's just tap here, play, nothing fancy, gets us as a developer. You've gained insight into this.
Yep. I get you. It's sort of just the input and output of the data, but then the app is really about what it can then mine out of that data.
Yeah. So here we can see I had level 3 knee pain. I mean, as a user, you can just read that and go, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Or even like display it on like a social media feed timeline. Not to say, I mean, like that type of UI where you're scrolling through your history, not in an actual post, but yeah.
So now we had beer in and we had whiskey. So now you can ask it for, give me all the times I had alcohol. You could write it out, but you can just type alcohol.
Yeah, so that this shows a sort of
intelligence above the data. It's able to see,
right.
Oh, beer and whiskey are alcoholic beverages.
Right, which you couldn't do in a regular SQL query unless you had a lookup table that told you which was which.
Yes, and I think that's what we're getting from here. That would take a huge amount of effort to put that together, and you would always miss it.
Yeah, and you'd always, like you said, have to be adding to categories and recategorizing if you're going to give the user any kind of freedom to track their own things.
So now, okay, so it brought back 50 ml of whiskey and a 500 ml beer.
Yes.
Okay. Which is exactly what it should have brought back. And we can do the same for seafood. Just type seafood in there and we should get back fish. We should. Now, the interesting thing is, it will give you back, I'll show you now with the results, it'll give you back everything depending on in the order of distances. So
right, okay.
If you ask for 5, it's going to give you 5 things. Like here, a fish, but it had chicken, which has nothing to do with seafood. But we only had one item with seafood in it.
And so it's going to give you the top 5, even if they're further away relationally. Yeah.
So, and there is no way to say, only give me stuff that's below 1.5.
Right.
So what I read is to say you've then got to take the results and determine what your distance is, and then you've got to then say, no, I'm not going to bring back anything beyond 1.5 or whatever you decide is your threshold.
Exactly. That makes sense. And that probably it will depend on the granularity of the data, right? Like some people might capture in their natural way, or even the grid might capture certain things more granular. Yep.
So yeah, when I just put in potatoes, it brought potato fries and potato chips back. And you can see here, this is 1.08, that's 1.7, but we go back up to the chicken where they're 1.5. So, we can decide at what point we want to limit the searching. What I haven't started doing and would take a lot more time is to now say, well, give me trends. I want to see, so if we go to the data, let's just say high pain. I think I did that before. And I think I got quite a good result. In other words, show me all the instances over the last X, we could do time, where I had knee pain. Or I had a high level of pain. And
right, because you've got the dates, that makes sense. You have that context, yeah.
I have the context of the dates and also have the context of the pain levels.
And I'm also wondering, that alcohol query really made me think. I mean, I wonder, maybe not right out of the box, but I wonder if you couldn't also go like vitamin D or carbohydrates or something like that.
Yeah.
And see how deeply it goes into the categories of food.
It's interesting. Yeah, it brought back knee pain and then vitamin D. Because I think it picked up a high value. But it is quite high out there. So you want to go, what are you looking for? Carbs.
Yeah, like exactly. And just because that level of query, alcohol to me is on the same level of that. If it already understands that one level, it'll be interesting.
So now the question is, now we've got to get, I think I'm going to generate way more data the next round, is to say, okay, let me simulate 2 weeks worth of inputs, 3 times a day, random stuff, and see if we can pick up trends. There you go. Potato chips, potato chips, and if I make those 5, I should get the rice as well.
Yeah, see now that right there, again, it's just now with the power of this query, it's almost like as a developer, you don't even have to think of all the things that people might want to bind in it.
Yeah. I want to try. Now that you make me think, I want to try if I put in things like, I will try next one nightshades and see if it picks up.
Yes,
the potatoes. Exactly. But yeah, so now the next thing is simulating large volumes of data, looking at performance, but also looking at, you can see
rice.
Potato fries, fish, and
then that's more.
So yeah, and I think it's given us we can go down this route. I don't know if we want to try other things. We must try. So I think this is vectorizing and going into a SQL database. I haven't actually looked at the database. Right. Then you get Postgres vector. I think that's the next thing where we can put the vectorization straight into a vector database. Because I think these are vectorized and then into a SQL database, which is why we're having performance issues. Let's see.
Yeah, I think this is similar to, I think, the way that Cloudflare tries to set it up too, where you create a document for each one of your entries, and then it stores those in the database, but then it vectorizes, it searches the vectors, but then it returns from the database.
Yeah, no, I didn't get that one. It brought whiskey up first. I didn't know what the heck.
Well, you do drink whiskey at night often, so maybe that's maybe making some associations. Not you, but maybe I'm saying if you drink whiskey.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this is good, man. I get what you're saying about prototyping, right? Like, so 10 years ago, you had this app idea. You probably only had SQL as your option as a database, so you were fighting against it in the rest of your engineering.
Yeah, you would never have been able to build this as effectively as. And here's the thing: is that you would never have anticipated AI, and now you would have been scrambling to put the AI in. I mean, you probably could have done it. Look at that. I put in potato vegetables. I mean, nightshade vegetables.
And it got it.
It came back with potato fries and potato chips. That is pretty impressive. Wow.
Yeah. That is. So this is, it's already impressing me and inspiring different things.
Yeah. So the next step, I think, is to get the PG Postgres vector database running, and what it takes to do that. I'll see if there's a container for that, and then get this in there. So, and at that point, I might move everything across to Node, but also generate, like 1,000 records, 5,000 records, and see. But this prototyping is saying this is doable.
Yeah,
this is definitely doable. This we could definitely. Make this a part of our app from the very beginning.
Yeah, I agree. And to that point you said about, running it on your own infrastructure. I mean, just in the last 2 weeks, things have expanded to make that even more possible. Like yesterday, they released a new range of Llama open source models. Some of them are as small as 2.5 gigabytes, right? I've been using that for my JDE query that I'm going to be demoing later with a customer. So it runs on very low memory, but then they also released a Python package called Llama Stack, which basically is a whole toolkit to do what you're doing using Python to get any model running up on any Linux server. And basically, you run their Llama Stack and you get a REST endpoints for inference, for managing your models, for evaluating it. All kinds of different agents. Yeah. There's a whole system on agents that we'll probably need to look at in the future. So I think that where you're headed and running it ourselves is sort of the goal. I don't think we're going to need to use any sort of paid token API.
And I think I would like to try, once we've got say 1,000 records and we can put them into a database, and we got the vector database running, then it's like, okay, let's try with all these different models
Yeah.
and see which ones gives us good performance, which one gives us good results.
Yeah. And that's what I'm noticing too, that there's a wildly difference if I'm analyzing the data between which model I choose. Some are just so good at certain things. So I'm
Yep.
with you.
And I think we're looking for a model that understands things like what is a nightshade vegetable, what's, carbohydrates, what's,
That's right.
those type of things, but also a model that can give us, tell me the last, because what we want to do is after the users entered the data, we want to run a set of standard queries that say, your trends, your Nippay trends, your these trends, and not only that, what happened alongside it.
What are the
So
interrelationships?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I
That's
think
the distance in this database, right? That's what you're encoding in these, is this
yeah,
sort of
but it's also to say,
invisible distances.
if I had a high knee pain on this date, kind of, I'm not too sure yet how to get the AI, and that will take some work to look back and pick up that if that's happened 4 times, what are the same 4 occurrences? That I'm not too sure how we could do that. That'll be tricky, but
Well, but that's about, it might just take some clever, data clustering. Like if we take
yeah,
things as we put them in, and then they're related when the query. But I think there's some great engineering there, because
yeah,
I do think that you've already proven, like you said, with the prototyping, that this is possible. And now it would be just about optimizing it to try to get the kind of performance that a user would expect. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, I still don't think 30 seconds or 20 seconds would
No.
be.
And especially, like you said, it's not like we have to design it where the user presses it to request the query. We can have the query pre-compiled in a certain
Yeah,
way, right?
yeah. There
Batch.
will be
Yeah.
a standard load of pre-compiled queries. We will also, offer the, just the general text box to kind
Yeah,
of, like,
that's
how many
right.
times did I actually have an alcoholic drink over the last 6 weeks? Or
That's right.
how many times did I do these things? What it can't do, I don't think it can do things like, well, I must find out if it. I think at this point it's really just a fancy search engine.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of the data it can interpret to say, group, or I must try. I haven't honestly tried it, so
Yeah, and I think that that's where my playing around with this JDE data, that's where I'm seeing it's interesting that you could actually get it. If I send it a summary of all the orders and I ask it something, it's not just drawing on those orders I sent, it's also drawing on its training data around JD Edwards. So it's throwing back things like, your DOCO number seems to be incorrect, because some of them, it's like it knows JDE rules. So I'm saying that to say some of these models are probably going to know, because of their training data, dietary, or
yeah,
exercise statistics much better than others.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And at some point we have to ask ourselves, where in the process are we going to go out and get nutritional value, and do we even need it, and how do we
Right.
store that? But that's
That might be baked in the model. That's right.
nutritional value is not high on my priority at this point in time.
No, because it does get down to a very technical level too. If you're studying at that level, there's already tools out there.
Yeah,
This is more general across things, not going deeply into one, like a
yeah,
research scientist, right?
yeah. So this is not a model like that. This model is just basically, it's an intelligent search engine.
Right. Because interestingly, I could go with the JD Edwards orders. I could say which vendor has the most open orders, and it would then tell me, I'm counting the orders for each vendor. It would then give me a list of each vendor with the counted orders and say, based on my results, vendor 243 has the most orders.
Can you give me that model?
Yeah. It's the newest Llama 3. I'm running it in my local machine. I'll send it to you just after this chat. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think prototyping, it's
Nice.
fantastic. It's
Fantastic.
important. And a lot of people just don't know what to do and how to do it. But as we've seen just in the simple example, it can yield some pretty significant. If we design the app up front with what we've done in mind, we'll be further than if we designed the app and thought, oh, let's put AI in as an afterthought.
Right. Yeah,
We'd be stuck.
now we've got to go find a tool that meets what we've already done. And as you say, that's the advantage of doing it like this. Now we can build a tool that reasonably can achieve with this, with what this can do. That's amazing. Awesome,
Right.
man. Well, it's a great another chat. I'll see you in the
Yeah.
next episode.
Yep. Cheers.
Cool. Cheers.